Hey, Mr. Kenneth.
Hey, Leo, how are you?
Good, brother. How are yourself?
Good, thanks. Good to see you.
Yes,
Thank you for inviting me. I
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you for taking the time of your day and coming and join us at Parable Podcast.
Right?
And how's your year been so far? It's been only been what, 24 days, 25 days?
Actually, I think you lost a couple.
29.
29.
God damn it. Dios.
I know it flies by when you're staying sober.
Right?
Right?
Right? Seriously, man. It's something that I think I mentioned that to you a while back,
Right.
where I usually do. I've done 6 months on, 6 months
Right.
off.
Yeah. What makes you take time off?
So the original idea was because I have never really been a big drinker,
Right.
to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Just because I never. It's not fun at the beginning. I mean, it tastes like shit, to be
Right.
honest.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Unless you're drinking blueberry lemon drops at Fleming's,
exactly.
which you probably don't drink.
Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
don't.
right.
But when you start drinking, you drink alcohol, and I mean, I don't think there's ever been one human being that can be like, "Oh, that
I
was
love
delicious."
the taste of this. Yeah, I agree with you.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Or the same thing with a cigarette, right? It's like,
Yeah,
oh
in
my
the
god,
beginning,
that
yeah.
tastes so good.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's definitely an acquired taste, but I think it has to do a lot with peer pressure,
Right.
family,
Yeah.
and things like that. That you're like, okay, well, if everybody's doing it,
Right.
why should I not be doing it?
Yeah. I just remember the first time I got drunk was with my mom at a neighbor's house they were drinking vodka Collins, and the neighbor, who I think was like a horny old lady, had an eye on this teenager. I don't know. I was in 10th grade. I'm not really sure about what the deal with her, but she was telling my mom she's doing Collins mix, and my mom goes, "You make sure you don't put vodka in there." Well, she was putting vodka in it, and I remember walking to the bathroom and kind of feeling like I was rising out of my seat or something, and I loved that feeling. And about an hour and a half later, I'm laying on her driveway with my face in the concrete because I'm so sick. And my mom came outside. She goes, "You're going to school tomorrow." And so I went to school at 10th grade for the first time with a hangover. And I had no idea what this would be. And I swore, never again. Well, part of the reason we're here is talking about that never again never happened. So, yeah. But we've been talking what we talked about earlier about you doing this time away and how this dry January thing, I'd never heard of it, but people were mentioning it at Fleming's that, yeah, I'll have a drink. She's doing dry January. I'm like, oh, who's dry January? I don't know. Who's she doing? But
Yeah, I think it's something that's been. I want to say. I want to say it's been probably like a couple of years.
yeah. But so you bumped from 6 months to a
But,
year.
Yeah, but I've been doing it for. It's gonna be 7 years that I
Right.
started. Like I'm just not gonna drink for a solid 6 months, and more than anything, it shows. Obviously, I'm doing it for my health, right?
Right. Yeah.
Want to give my body a break, and I once again, I have never been like a big drinker,
Right.
where I would drink every single. Well, after I met Deborah, I was drinking almost every single day, but it was a drink or two, right?
Right.
Not
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
blacked out.
Right.
But I was never, once again, an everyday drinker.
Right.
So it was like in the weekends or
Yeah.
friends getting together,
Right.
socializing. And for some reason, after I started doing my yoga and I got into more of my
right.
wellness, taking care of myself, I decided to, I'm going to do 6 months on, 6 months off.
Right.
And what that taught me, obviously, besides loving myself, taking care of my body, was it showed a lot of my boundaries that I have with people around me.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, it showed other people the will that I have, because
Right.
once again, we'll go into depth later on, but how difficult for some people it is to just give up drinking,
Right. Right.
and it was never that hard for me. So I felt, and I have felt like people have more respect for you when you do something like that, right?
Yeah.
I never felt that peer pressure or like, oh, come on, have another one. I'm like,
Right.
no, I'm not drinking.
Yeah.
I'm just not drinking. That's it, period. There's no other
Right.
way around it.
Right.
So people look at you differently.
Yeah.
People look at you differently. People respect you more because
Right.
you doing something that they haven't given their chance to do it themselves.
Right.
Not that they cannot do it. I mean, I can
Right.
guarantee that they can do it. Just once again, haven't given it a shot, right?
Right.
I remember Jennifer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember Jen. Shout out to Jen. Hopefully she'll see
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Right.
I remember when I first talked to her about it. When I was doing it, and she mentioned something about doing a month.
Right.
I told her, I'm like, just do a month. You don't
Yeah.
have to do 6 months.
Right. Yeah.
Just do a month. See how you feel.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're obviously going to make the decision of if you want to continue this or not.
Right.
Apparently she's not drinking right now, right?
For, I don't know, since last summer, it may be 9 months or something. Her and her husband have committed, and I'm only telling this because she's been putting it on TikTok, so I assume she doesn't mind if people know. I try to respect people's anonymity, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But I think I'm very happy for her.
Absolutely,
She has over the years been wanting to and not wanting to, and like a lot of people, just enjoy drinking, and then occasionally would have issues or like I don't want this to happen to me. I'm not happy with this, and struggled to find a place where it was okay to stop, and it just happened for her last summer. And she's got a very supportive husband, and
Josh
he's
is the shit.
he's
Okay,
man. You know
of
him.
course.
And he's a rather disciplined guy, and he's the guy. He enjoyed drinking too, but I think the two of them together, when they put their mind to something, they do it. I mean, I got to give them credit. They are an amazing couple, and their life has become just more increasingly amazing as they've moved to Boise. And he's just a hard worker, and she's a very faithful wife and diligent worker herself. And so that's happened for her, which is great. And part of what we're going to talk about is my situation is I took the harder back road to get there, but of sorts. I mean, for everybody, it's a little different, but
Right.
But the things when we talked about originally, what do you want to talk about? And I don't. This is how I guess I would like to open it up.
Please do.
I was thinking of and I guess everybody might want to give this thought occasionally. At my funeral, what would people say about me? And there's two things I think that would probably come up. Number one, he made me laugh. He was so funny, and that's part of what I want to talk about. The other one would be, I don't think I ever really knew who he was. I never really knew him. And I think I mentioned to you my group of men that I've known for many years at my church, and I meet with them for breakfast and stuff. And one of them I've known since 1985. His name's Tom. He's 85 years old. And we were at breakfast a few weeks back, and I somehow know that, I don't know why, this is a group of Christian men that should be talking about the Bible, and we're usually talking about other stuff, typically.
Everything but the Bible.
And somehow Robin Williams came in. You know how religious that is.
Yeah.
And I don't remember why, but I mentioned something about, they say that a lot of comedians, their humor comes from a place of depression and that type of thing. And my friend Tom, who knows me well and has known me since 85, said, well, we know that's not true about you. And the reason everybody at church knows I'm funny because I did the announcements for 10 years, and my thing was that I was allowed to be funny. And I looked at Tom and I go, oh my gosh, Tom, my humor absolutely comes from a place of depression and a difficult time in life. But I realized conversely, another elder at church told me about a year ago, he said, Ken, one thing you got to know is you're not an easy guy to get to know.
Really?
And so I thought, you combine that to the guy that I thought really knew me well, and I realized that I use this humor to hide what's really going on with me. And you and I had lunch, a few weeks back, and I was very candid with you. So candid, some of it I won't even talk about here. But and I appreciate you making me comfortable enough to do that.
Absolutely. No. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for meeting up and having a great conversation. Right now that you mentioned something about when like this person said to you that you're a hard person to get to know.
Right.
I felt like within that conversation that we had a couple of hours, I really got to know a lot about you, And once again, thank you for, allowing me to let me into your life. And
right. Well, and you shared a lot about mine too. So I've got shit on you, and you got shit on me. So we're even, right? Sort of, right?
Damn it.
And I was telling somebody, probably Jennifer. I said, I was really transparent. I guess because I just felt comfortable, and I appreciate it because I haven't known you. I've known about you and been around you a little bit, but this is what. And first of all, let me get this disclaimer out of the way. I don't know why this shit makes me emotional. I am so impressed by you. The fact that you are here's a line I wanted to share with you. It's by a guy named Ernest Becker, and I don't know who that guy is, but it says the road to creativity passes so close to the madhouse it often detours or ends there. Creative people, and this whole thing for many creative people, struggle with mental health issues. You don't seem to. You seem to really enjoy life, which is great. Maybe it's your yoga and the dealing with some of the stuff you had to deal with, but your art, your courage to do it. I have sat and talked about stuff all my life and never done it. You said, I'm going to try this. Well, why a podcast? I don't know. It just sounds like something I'd like to try, And are you any good at it? I don't know. Let me try and find out. And all this stuff you set up is impressive. Your art is beautiful. And
Thank you,
so
sir.
I
Thank
commend you. I've often said a restaurant job ultimately is a benefit for somebody who's using it as a springboard into something else. And nothing wrong with making a career out of it, but it's a shame not to utilize all the free time we have from it and the fact we make good money, we can afford it. And I'm impressed that you've done that. So anyway, get that out of the way.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
And what I learned, because I was telling you about how it's kind of a concept that's been out there that comedians, and I've got a list of them here. I did some reading around, and you know these people. Robin Williams, of course, suicide because of an illness, but profound depression and addiction. If you ever seen some of his stuff from the 80s, he was so high on coke. And so,
Really?
oh yeah, if you go back and watch some of his comedy specials, he's sweating and he's so hyper that it almost makes you anxious to watch him. But he's funny, but you can just kind of tell he has a quote in one of his things, and you can find it on YouTube. He says he goes from being this frenetic, insanely funny guy with this sweating like a pig because he's high on coke. And then he gets real serious and he goes, you're only given a little spark of madness, and if you lose that, you're nothing. He got so serious, and all the comments are like, people felt they really saw into him the stuff he was hiding, that the depth of his anxiety and depression and suffering or whatever. And this is another thing I found out that I thought was interesting. First of all, I labeled all my notes. Comedy often has deep roots in mental health struggles, okay? Did you know this? I'm fascinated. Have you heard of the Laugh Factory in LA? It's kind of like the Comedy Store, right?
Yeah.
In 2011, they brought in, and to this day still maintain, an in-house psychologist, therapist, that all the comedians have access to.
Really?
Because they've acknowledged that so many suffer from depression, anxiety, and addiction. So I thought, isn't that an interesting, some place like that that's all about lay yourself bare and stand up and do comedy, which is really almost like standing naked in front of people because it's either you get it or you don't get it, and either they get their approval or you don't.
Yeah.
But some of these notes, forgive me for talking about Sigmund Freud. This is interesting. Yeah. He suggested that comedians often tell jokes in order to relieve anxiety or sadness. And so it's been around since Sigmund Freud, which goes way back. And Jonathan Winters, I don't know if you're familiar with him, brilliantly from the 50s and 60s, and Robin Williams' mentor. Robin, we used to have him on his Mork and Mindy show.
Okay.
Brilliant, improvisational guy, funny guy. I remember hearing he had psychological problems. He was hospitalized twice in a psychiatric hospital with nervous breakdown, bipolar disorder. So, and here's a saying I've never heard, but it's kind of funny. People have often said, did you have a happy childhood or are you funny? And I'm like, well, I said, I'm not saying I didn't have a happy childhood, because that's not necessarily true. Well, first of all, before I go into that, there's some of the list of the people. Robin Williams, of course, ended up committing suicide. A lot of it was because he had this terminal illness that perhaps, I don't know if that's exactly why. John Belushi killed himself with a profound addiction. Lenny Bruce died of an overdose. Richard Pryor almost killed himself, catching himself on fire, and suffered with mental illness. Pete Davidson, current guy from SNL, talks about his mental struggles. Yeah. Greg Giraldo, I think I've seen him on those Comedy Central roasts. They found him overdosed accidentally on pills. He was supposed to perform at a function celebrating recovery stuff, but they think it was accidental. And so Russell Brand talks about his struggles with mental health. Yes. Richard Lewis, who you might know if you looked at him, he's from a while back, but he says that he came out and said something to the effect of, I have despised myself since I came out of the womb. He goes, I could never do anything right. I was always wrong. So I would get in front of an audience to try to win their approval about something in my life, which is, I mean, heavy
that
stuff.
is heavy stuff. And I mean, that
Yeah.
tells you about the childhood, right? I'm sure how much.
A lot of it, and mine comes out of a period of my life that I spoke to you about. I was born in North Carolina to some young parents, and my parents worked very hard and made sure my needs were met. And they worked hard to make a go of it in their life. And I was this kid that doesn't resemble anything like me today. I was this weird kid. I look at our home movies. I go, man, I am a weirdo. I'm just
Really?
all over spastic and screaming for attention. And I think I told you, my elementary school in this little town of Smithfield, North Carolina, had a big auditorium, had a costume department. They were big for a small town. Anyway, so because I was the kid that would get up there and do it and wanted to do it, I was in everything. I led the parade. I sang the songs. I was just that kid that would do it all, right? And so consequently, I loved it. That was my identity. Then we moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina, which was a military town. They had none of that, and I suffered. I guess because I kind of lost my identity. And then a year later, we moved all the way across the country to California, and my life and my whole family's life. I think my dad was excited because he was moving up in the world in his career, and
Yes.
and he was a young man, a good-looking man, and was and doing well. And I think for my mom and my brother and I, my mom and I in particular, my brother was young enough, we struggled to get our footing because in North Carolina, my grandparents had a farm. Every weekend we were there with my cousins, and I had an identity. So I came to California in fourth grade, and the first day I go to school, I'm dressed in what I would have worn to school in North Carolina. You know how if you're at the gym, you can spot the guy that's from Ohio because he's wearing clothes that are popular in Ohio, right? But dude, we don't wear that out here,
You
right?
come to California,
yeah,
and
and it's different,
completely
right?
different.
They don't
beast,
have
yes.
surf wear. Well, maybe they do. I don't know. But if I went and wore what I'm wearing today in Ohio, they'd probably go, "Yeah, this dude's from out of town." And so I showed up at school wearing, I forget what it was, but stuff that they don't wear in California, in Anaheim at Sunkist Elementary. And I remember being made fun of right off the bat. And I had this Southern accent, and I was, it was, people would say, say something. I go, what do you want me to say? I stood out like a sore thumb. I was used to attention, but I didn't like the negative attention I was getting.
Attention.
And so I was just such a kiss ass. I wanted to be the teacher's pet and all that crazy shit. And I was. And my teacher wrote my mom, she said, I think Kenneth is too polite. Because I was, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, please, thank you. That was part of growing up in the South.
Right.
California, the kids were fast. And
Yeah.
back there, we played in the woods. We had creeks to dam up and rivers and ponds to fish in. And you come to California, everybody's got a lawn about that big, if they have a lawn at all. And that I just didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
So it was a huge adjustment. And then fourth and fifth grade, I remember I got elected to student council. And I remember I came home and I was elected treasurer, which meant nothing. But it was, when you're in fourth grade, you're the treasurer, whatever that meant.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody let me hold any money ever. But I came home and told my mom, and I remember she cried. I think she was so concerned that I was struggling to find my way here. Next year, I was voted historian. Yay. And I knew in fifth grade.
How old were you?
And I was fourth grade. When we moved here, I was 9. So
Okay.
in fourth grade, when I got to fifth grade, I was voted historian, and I just knew I was going to be a shoo-in in sixth grade to be president, ASB, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Student council, they called it. And of course, we moved before I got to sixth grade. I kind of established a little bit of an identity. I got harassed. I got bullied by one guy, Andre Didier, and I don't know why he picked on me because I dressed funny. And I remember he had these little buddies and they would throw balls at me or whatever. And one day he shoved me and I turned around and I just hit him. It just instinctively happened. And they say that's what you do to a bully and he goes away. He never bothered me again, right? And but I experienced that kind of crap. It was, it was a weird transition. Anyway, I'm not complaining. It's just the way it is. Kids get bullied. I didn't get bullied badly, but that was a little uncomfortable. But
Right.
we moved to this new cross town, this new house, a nice new tract house, and as Dad's moving up and things are good, we've got swimming pool, we got life is good. I go to sixth grade, and then I think I mentioned to you at that time, Anaheim School District went kindergarten through sixth. Then junior high was seventh through ninth.
Yes.
And it's not that way anymore. And I think that's a good thing. To mix seventh graders in with ninth graders, and the problem is the gym. It's when you go, I didn't have a problem so much in the locker room issue, but I saw kids there that had not matured as much as others, and it was so profound. I watched kids get washed away by harassment and bullying. It was sad. So I think it's good that they ended that. But during that seventh grade thing, and I think I told you, in elementary school, the teacher, you love your teacher, she loves you, and all that happens, and then you go to, you got 7 periods, and all these teachers hardly know you. It's a different world.
Yes.
And me wanting to be the special one and the teacher's pet, though, that just wasn't happening. And it's just not set up that way. And so I was struggling with that, and and it turns out in my home, at home, my mom and dad were having some issues in their marriage that was going on, and we were all still kind of trying to get our footing. And my mom, and I don't think my brother, but my mom and I in particular, we missed home, we missed North Carolina, we missed the family. And anyway, so that's where this sense of humor came in. I think I told you, I remember the first joke I ever remember putting together in my mind, and it made my dad laugh. And one of the things they say about a lot of comedians is, especially ones that struggle with mental health, is they had a distant relationship with their father. And that was the case with my dad. And just mainly because he probably didn't know what to do with this weird boy he had. And he was working all the time. He was busy, and he was taking care of business, and he always provided for us.
Right.
And so I think what impressed me was the fact that I made him laugh. And like I said, I think I told you, we had a swimming pool, and we had called a chem account. And every week, a pool man would come, week or every 2 weeks, and check the chemicals in the pool and put chlorine or whatever. Well, he hadn't come that week, and my dad goes, man, I better get out there and check and make sure the chlorine's right, because he had a little test kit. My brother had blonde hair, and my brother, his hair would turn green when he swam in a chlorinated pool. So I told my dad, it's really not a funny joke, but it was funny then. I said, well, Dad, all you got to do is go put Alan's hair in the pool and see if it turns green, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, wow, I like making people laugh. So that's where the sense of humor came from. Another problem in junior high was there was a struggle I had with a couple of old ninth graders that were just picked on me, harassed me to some degree, made me uncomfortable. And what it's turned out is the kid that I really was, that I grew to kind of hate. The weird kid that I was that wasn't self-conscious about the fact that he just liked to do the things he liked to do. I began to push that away and try to become something different to win the approval, what I thought would win the approval of others around me. And so consequently, because I was denying, and I still to this day do it, deny, I guess, what I really felt like, because I didn't feel strong enough to stand up and go, hey, this is me, take it or leave it. That's you, I'll take you or leave you, whatever. I began to create this phony self, and it was hidden behind humor. And like people talk about the class clown, there's usually something going on in their life. That's how. Right. And I became the guy that was
so there's like
the
this
joker.
Facade that you start.
A facade, and that humor keeps everybody at a distance. That's why my friend Tom 2 weeks ago doesn't really know a whole lot about me. Doesn't really know, and I'll be honest with you, I don't really know a whole lot about me. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you can dredge up, I guess, in therapy. But what I do know is that when you begin to, at least this is my experience, deny yourself. When you start trying to be something that you're not for other people, I guess is kind of what I was doing. Right. I didn't realize it, but that's what I was doing. It's not a surprise that it led to addiction, that it led to heavy drinking, and but always laughing. I was always the life of the party. Ken's coming, and I had a group of friends that I still have to this day. One I've known since 4th grade, one since 6th grade. A couple that was at Fleming's last night that I've known since 1984.
Wow.
And but I was always the guy that was drunk and having fun, and I was the funny guy. And so anyway, that's my whole thing about humor. And then the addiction thing kicked in, and it was rough. I didn't finish college because all I wanted to do was drink, and then I was introduced to cocaine, and that's a great combination. And I had that group of friends I had, that core group, they didn't do that stuff. They drank, but they got married and they had kids, and some of them went to college and finished school and got careers. And I was still the dude just partying and hiding in my room doing coke and that kind of stuff, which doesn't add up to a bright future, So
When was that you realized that you started to have a problem with the addiction? Were you high school? Were you already out of high school?
I was out of high school. Because I didn't drink much in high school. I drank, and once I got out and went to some college, not a lot of college, but and a couple of my good friends were members of the Phi Kappa Tau fraternity at Cal State Fullerton. So I got to hang out there a lot, which there was a lot of drinking going on there. And I think when did I think it was a problem? I think when it got to, well, especially with regard to Coke, when it would keep you up all night and you were depressed, and I had made a profession of faith as a Christian in my teens, so I felt this profound conviction that what I was doing was wrong, and I'd met people that party and don't have any problem with it. They're like, yeah, I'm a little depressed, but I go to sleep, but I laid there.
And you were feeling guilty, and you were
terribly
feeling all
guilty.
this.
Yeah, repeating in my mind. This is an old hymn. It's called "Just as I am, without one plea, but that Thy blood was shed for me, and that Thou biddest me come to Thee, O Lamb of God, I come." I would say that over and over in my head. I'm like, "Please, God, put me to sleep. Put me to sleep," because I just want to go to sleep. And if you've ever done it, you understand how it just won't let you sleep, and you've depleted all your endorphins, I guess, and so you're automatically depressed. And there was. I didn't go seek help till I was 28, and I remember I was dating this girl that lived down in Laguna Niguel. Her dad, Jesse Frost, owned the Frost Group, owned a bunch of apartments, buildings, and very wealthy guy. And anyway, they had the 16,000 square foot house over off Junipero Serra. You can still see it from the freeway, I think. And they had me over for this Cinco de Mayo party. But my birthday was May 15th, so they also surprised me with celebrate that.
Right?
And we were drunk, and Dana was her name. She and I snuck off and went and got some Coke and stayed up all night. And I remember I went home, and I had roommates. I lived on the peninsula, and I woke up like 3 days later on the couch. I mean, I truly just... And I'm
3 days later?
It's just, I just would wake up and go back to sleep and wake up because I had just been doing it for so many days in a row. And I don't know why my roommates never said anything, but... I remember I walked over to the phone book and opened up for Cocaine Anonymous, and it was circled. I don't know why. Who circled it? Maybe my roommates were like, yeah, one of these days, maybe he'll wise up. And here it is. Take a look. And but what
it had like a sticky note right there.
It's like, it was like a Post-it note sticking out of the phone book. All the other pages were missing. It's like only Cocaine Anonymous. And I went to my first meeting of the Newport Club in May of 1988. And I was telling I've told Jennifer this a few times, and I told a friend of mine the other day who had relapsed after being sober 7 years. I said, I am, as of January 1st this year, I'm 10 years sober, and I went to my first meeting in May of 1988. So I obviously had a rocky road with regard to sobriety. Wow. I would stay sober 3.5 years here, and then I'd be out for a year. And when I say out, I don't think I ever... I did lose a job one time over it, but for a lot of times I had jobs that I was able to kind of make it work, but the thing I didn't tell you before I went to that meeting, I attempted suicide twice, and that's I'm not saying this to get any sympathy. It was under the influence of mushrooms. And,
really?
Yeah. I had a roommate that every time the Grateful Dead would come to town, he would sell mushrooms, right? And he had told me once, he goes, "You're so funny," right? It's always about being so funny. He goes, I want to do mushrooms with you sometime because you're going to be so funny, right? Wow. And so I'm like, I'm sure, all right, I'll try it. Well, this guy was an asshole. And he and I did a lot of partying together. And we had a black cat. And under the influence of mushrooms, he told me that he was the devil. And the black cat was the devil's cat. And of course, I've never done mushrooms. So how your mind believes all this crazy stuff. Tripping. I truly was. I mean, I ran out down the street to the park, laid in the grass in the middle of the night. And all I kept envisioning in my mind was Nazi stormtroopers marching by. I don't know where that came from. But what I found about the mushrooms.
What an
introduction to,
dude.
Yeah, I didn't go to any Grateful Dead concerts after that. What I felt like the mushrooms did was it made my mind go out like this and then turn back and look at myself. And I didn't like what I saw. And I think it was the first time that I kind of saw clarity. They say there are some benefits to hallucinogenics, can open your mind to some things. Right. And I think I saw something I didn't care for. But what happened was a couple times at some point a year or so later, I was doing my coke. I'd been up all night. I had to work in the morning, and the liquor store was closed. It was 2 a.m. I had to be at work at 7, and I needed alcohol to come down, and there was no alcohol. So I went and snuck in Steve's room, and there was I wanted to change the way I feel. So I took these mushrooms, and under the influence of mushrooms, there was a voice in my head that said, "Oh, you want to go to sleep, right?" I go, "Yes, I just want to go to sleep." Well, here's what you do: you go get in your car, and you grab the waterbed hose from your roommate and put it in your exhaust pipe. And I'm not a suicidal person. That voice told me to do that. I remember thinking, but wait, that means don't think about that. You just want to go to sleep. So I did it. I had a Volvo wagon, and we had so much crap in the garage, I couldn't get it in the garage, thank goodness. And it was sitting in the driveway, on an angled driveway, the neighbor's car right next to me, put it in the exhaust pipe, got in my Volvo car, started the car, ran the hose, and I just remember, that was probably 3 a.m. I woke up at 1 p.m. on the couch, upstairs, don't remember, I don't know how I got from down there to up there. I went and looked over the balcony, and the hose was still connected to, and my roommates had come and gone to work. Nobody mentioned there's a hose stuck in your exhaust pipe. It happens to be my waterbed hose. My one neighbor might have said. I went, and the car was still turned on, but the engine wasn't running. It was the weirdest thing. So something saved me from that.
Wow.
And then it happened again, maybe a year or so later. I don't remember. Same place, same situation. And this time I went and parked behind a building across the street, and I took and cut off the neighbor's garden hose, water hose, because I didn't have a roommate with the waterbed had moved, I guess. And so I get in my Volvo wagon. I can't afford my hose. I can't fill my waterbed anymore because the dude keeps trying to kill himself. And and I laugh about it. It's kind of dark humor, but it is what it is.
Right.
And it's that under the influence of mushrooms, this voice was talking to me and telling me to do things I wouldn't have done normally. Because I think I'm probably too much of a narcissist to kill myself, I mean, the people who you kind of wish, maybe you want to think about it. Those folks don't do it. It's the ones you hate to see go. That's a terrible thing to say. But anyway, there are probably people that were kind of wishing that I'd stayed in the Volvo. So I parked behind this building and it was 4 a.m, I remember it, and nobody should see me back there. I had just rolled my seat back again to kind of kick back and wait to go to sleep, as this voice said. And I remember through my eyelids, you can see light. I saw flashing lights, and I remember I peeked up because I was laying back. I went and I go, oh shit, it's the cops. And all of a sudden they pull around behind me. I'm like, oh my God, they're here for me. And I have no idea how they found this out. One guy comes to the door and he tries to open it. He goes, it's locked. And he starts beating on the window. I go, I don't want to have to repair the window. So I just opened the door. And he's like, what the hell do you think you're doing? And I never imagined having to explain this to anybody. I said, I'm having a bad day. That's all I knew to say to him. I'm like, I'm having a bad day. Well, there truly is, I really believe, the reality to a good cop and a bad cop. The one cop was just angry. I'm trying to do this to myself. The other cop goes, dude, just go. I lived right below Hoag Hospital. He goes, listen, I'll run him up to Hoag. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of him. And I remember on the way up, it was a short drive. The guy goes, hey, why would you want to do something like that? And I don't recall, but I thought, what a nice cop. But anyway, went there. I had been in the car maybe 5 minutes. They couldn't find a trace of carbon monoxide in my body, and so thankfully, once again, I asked the guy, what made you come? And he said, somebody called and said, we think somebody's trying to kill themselves. Nobody on the street. It's a total one-sided street. I was behind a building. There was nobody there. Never saw anybody. I was in there 5 minutes. I don't know. Is it a divine intervention thing? Is it angels watching? I mean, I don't know. But all I know is I got 5150, so I had to spend, they lock you up for 72 hours, put you in a hospital. And of course, I'm so good. I met with the psychologist or the guy that came in. He goes, listen, what are you doing here? I mean, I was normal compared to the people in there. And I could give him a line of, he goes, dude, you need to just slow down with the coke.
Right.
And I said, okay. So he let me out early. I got out early. And I went home, and I'd probably been gone 2 days, maybe, or a day and a half. And my keys were sitting on the top of my car where the cops left them, just sitting there. It was weird. It was just a strange thing. But anyway, I didn't stop, and then eventually went to that that 12-step meeting.
You mentioned about the mushrooms, right? And after that situation, which it happened twice, right?
Twice, yeah.
And in both situations, you wanted to commit suicide.
I did not want to. I wanted to go to sleep. And this voice, because my mind had been surrendered to something else.
Right.
And this voice said, "You want to go to sleep?
you wanna go to sleep.
Here's a way to do it."
Okay.
And I'm thinking, is there any other way? But
Right.
and I knew, my mind said, but wait a minute, what you're thinking about means don't think about it. He said, don't think about that. You just want to go to sleep.
Right.
Because my rational
Right.
mind is like, no, you're talking about suicide here, and I'm not looking to do that.
Right.
I just want to go to sleep. Or I want some vodka. I want to come down. And so anyway.
Right. It is a very. I'm not. I mean, I have done mushrooms. I have read a little bit about it, and I know many people that do it.
Yeah.
But when, for example, in my case, when I ever wanted to do any kind of drugs, for example, when it started with the weed,
Right.
I didn't do weed until it became legal in California.
Really?
Yeah. So I was 35, 36.
Did you wait just for it
Just
to be
because of that.
legal?
Just because of that.
you're a
Yeah,
law-abiding
because-
citizen.
Absolutely. Even though I don't look like it.
No. Looks can be deceiving, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I always was like, I don't know. There's no need for me to get in trouble. Once
Right.
again, I tasted weed when I was 19.
Yeah.
I was seeing this girl that we do crazy shit sometimes for women, right?
Yeah.
And this girl used to work at Fleming's. This is a cool story though. I was 19.
Right.
I was actually about 18, 19 years old. And I lost about 50 pounds in like 3 months.
How did you do that?
I was taking Herbalife or something like that,
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah.
helped me. Like
Yeah,
it helped me
it will.
tremendously. It really worked out that year. But this is like 99, 2000.
Right.
So this girl that used to work at Fleming's,
Right.
Amber Richardson, I will never forget.
That sounds familiar. Actually.
Amber, and dude, I was like completely infatuated by this girl. Right?
Was she a server?
She was a server. Yeah. And she was 10 years older than me.
Perfect.
She was 28, 29.
That's
I
Leo's
was like,
jam.
that's how I roll. So I'm, I lose weight, and all of a sudden she starts noticing me.
Right.
And I was like, oh, great, okay. She's like, oh, you want to hang out? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, let's hang out. Anyways, I ended up doing weed with her because she used to smoke. And she goes, hey, you want to smoke? And I'm like, in the back of my head, my parents,
Right. Yeah.
church, everything
Right,
is in the back
all
of your
of
head. It's just telling you, don't do it. That's
Right.
not right. And I was like, but I think I was so scared and afraid that when I didn't, it had no effect on me.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Those voices in my head were stronger than the weed that I smoked. So I was like, okay, this tastes like shit, first of all.
Well,
And
right.
I didn't feel a thing. I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to do it.
Right.
And I never did it again.
Well, what happened with Amber? That's what I want to know.
Well, we hang out a few more times. It was fun for a little bit.
Right.
It was really fun for a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I will always, she was a really super cool chick.
You left as friends and everything's good.
Yeah. Everything was good. I mean, I think after that, I think she left. I want to say 2002, 2003. And for some reason, I was able to get a hold of her information, and I called her, and she was coming to California because I think she moved to Texas, and we met up and had lunch.
Nice.
10 years later,
Yeah.
and this was around 2009, 2010, I think, probably when we met again, and it was just nice, to
Yeah.
be able to catch up with her.
Right.
She got married, had a kid, and that was it. But it was that, that person that you always look up to. You like,
Right.
oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm like in love. Like you don't
Right.
even know this person. How can you be in
Right.
love with this person?
Or
right?
sometimes you get what you think you want, and then you don't know what to do with it.
Oh,
It's like okay, now
no,
what?
And especially at that age,
Right.
like, I mean, you are
Yeah.
a kid. I mean, you
Right.
don't you really don't know what's going on.
Right. I'm
You
sure
know?
she was willing to.
She was.
Instruct you.
She was absolutely.
That's the advantage of a 10-year difference.
Oh, totally.
Right,
Yes. So anyway, so that happened. I never smoked weed. In 2000 and I want to say it was 16, I believe. I was once again dating this other girl. I don't know if you remember Tara. She came into Flames a few times.
I think so.
She
Yeah,
was
yeah.
she was a great girl. You know, I don't have anything really bad to talk about her. You know, but it was just not. It obviously didn't work out. We were just good friends. But she started to introduce me to, hey, let's smoke.
Right.
And I had this experience. It was fucking hilarious, bro. So we're hanging out. It was here. We were hanging out with my friends. It was Israel, and do you remember Gilberto? He was the manager for.
Manager?
Yeah.
That went to Fresno?
Yeah.
What?
Dude, he was my roommate for 2 years.
Oh, you know what? I think I did hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was my
What
roommate.
an interesting combination.
Bro. Bro, I mean, that
Nicest
kid,
man in the world.
coolest
Oh,
dude.
gosh.
But in talking about partying, bro,
Really?
that kid drank like,
Really?
oh, dude, he loved to party.
Really?
I heard he has changed his ways now, and he
Yeah.
has a beautiful family, 2 kids, and I'm so happy for him. He's a cool dude. He's a really good friend of
Oh,
mine. But he
wonderful
did like to
guy.
party. Amazing dude.
Interesting.
Amazing dude. My family loved them. My mom loved them. Anyways, so we're all hanging out here, and she comes over and she's like, I brought a joint. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I haven't smoked so this is like 17 years, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we started smoking, and I'm started smoking like I'm smoking a cigarette.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, you take 1, 2, you pass it around,
Right. Yeah.
and then you take another 2, pass it around, whatever. And I'm just like
Oh, geez.
smoking that thing. Like, bro, I was so paranoid.
Oh, yeah.
I literally was so paranoid. We walk into the house. I'm in the kitchen and I'm facing the door.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's Tara's like somewhere like right next to me on my right, and she's just like looking at me. Israel is laughing his ass off. I don't know about what.
Right.
Gilberto is looking at the floor, just like in silence. We're like in our own world, like
All from that joint?
All from that joint.
Oh,
I think
wow.
and you know what was going through my head? This bitch drugged me.
Ah, you've been roofied.
I'm like, oh, of course, jackass. Of course you're being drugged. I'm
Yeah,
like, you
right.
were smoking that way. But in my head, I'm like, this
Right.
bitch drugged me. I'm like, yeah, you are.
Oh, funny.
Well, for sure.
Suspicious, paranoid.
Dude,
Oh,
I was like looking at the door, waiting for somebody to walk in.
yeah. That's a horrible
It
feeling.
was the
Because you
worst.
can't get it out of your head till it goes away.
The worst feeling in the world, bro.
Yeah.
The worst feeling in the world. And she keeps asking me, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm fine. Like,
Right.
leave me alone.
Yeah.
Are you okay? I'm like, I'm good. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And then I'm definitely I'm just like, don't get near me. Like,
Right.
I'm just complete paranoid. It was a horrible feeling. Anyways, and I'm like, how are you feeling? She's like, well, I'm fine. And I'm like, okay, she's feeling fine and I'm not. There's something going on. So,
yeah.
you know, like you mentioned right now with the psilocybin, with the mushrooms, there is 2 of you, right?
Right.
There's that really rational part of you that is like, there's something going on.
Right.
And then there's part that is like completely like under the drugs. I don't know if anybody feels like that, but at least I am like
Yeah.
that. Like I have that rational part of me that is still aware of the situation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, something's going on. This woman hasn't felt a thing. Everybody else is like done.
Right. Yeah.
I am done,
Yeah.
but she's not.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, it hits her.
Oh.
Like
Okay.
that within
Yeah.
a second.
Yeah.
It hits her, and I'm just like, how you feeling? And the look that she had in her face, bro,
Yeah.
it was of fear.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I'm like, what's going on? She goes, what happened? And I'm like, what do you mean what happened? I'm like, we're talking right now. She goes,
Right, yeah.
no, something happened. And I'm like, no. She goes, yeah, I blacked out. I'm like, no, you did not.
Oh, wow.
Like you're like now it hit her.
Right.
But in her head, like she skipped time.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. So you know what goes instantly into my head? I'm like, oh, she's gonna think something happened
Right.
bad to her.
And it's in her head, it's reality.
It's reality.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, hey, it's me.
Right.
Like I'm like literally holding her. I'm like, it's me.
Right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You're fine. Like, oh no. But she's like the face of fear that she had on her. It was really scaring me. So then I start to get sober. I start sobering up. So now my head is started to like, when something like that happened, it's happened a couple of times where I've been in situations where either I've been drinking or something like that. If something bad happens, there's that shift
Right.
that I start to, I'm like, okay, I need to sober up.
Yeah. Right.
So that happened right then immediately because, like, once again, I had that fear. I'm like, okay, something's gonna happen. What if you don't know?
Right. Yeah.
You know, she calls the cops saying that she was taken advantage of or something like that. I was petrified, bro. I was like, but she was fine. She was fine. I'm like, you know what? Just go to the room, lay down, sleep. You'll be fine.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, wow, dude. So after I was like, that was not a good trip. That was a really
obviously,
bad trip.
Tara and Amber get their weed at different places,
Bro, yes.
Like what? But this new marijuana, they say, is so intense. People are going into psychosis and not coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, they say it's scary.
But my point with that is that it's all about the setting, right? And you hear it about you hear about it a lot, where it's like, okay, it's not just the setting, obviously, it's not just the physical setting, but it's also the emotional setting,
right? Yeah,
and the mental setting,
which
it comes into it's a huge part of it.
Yeah,
and especially with psilocybin, it's such an incredible drug that helps for a lot of. You should read a book. There's I have an audiobook, and I'll show it to you. It's written by Michael Pollan. He's a journalist. He has done a beautiful and amazing documentaries regarding food, coffee, psilocybin now, and he has this book, and it's actually a documentary on Netflix already. It's been out for a couple of years. I want to say a couple of years, maybe a year and a half. And he talks about his experience and how psilocybin is being used for. And you know who's he talks about it too is the founder of that 12-step program.
Oh, well, yeah, Bill Williams. Bill Wilson. He did acid or something at UCLA or something like that. Was that what it was?
I believe he did
looking for something to help cure alcoholism, even though he was sober. But yeah, I heard he did that. Yeah, interesting.
So that just shows you how interesting and how powerful that drug can be when it's used in the right way.
In the right setting, like you said. They're people talking about microdosing. There's a friend of mine works in the industry of recovery and stuff. They're offering ketamine, therapy and stuff.
I will. The other podcast that I did and it hasn't come out yet. It will come out. It's going to be the next one to come out. I just need to edit it. He's a good dude, and he's trying to do ketamine sessions.
Huh.
Well, he doesn't do them, but he has gone through them, and now he's trying to bring the sound with a ketamine session.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's amazing. So he talks about it. He'll explain about ketamine on the next podcast. But what I mean is, like, it's so important for me, and I know this for a fact because if I know that I'm in a bad place in my life,
right,
I cannot do any of that stuff.
Right. It'll accentuate whatever you're feeling, I think, is what they say.
It definitely brings all those demons that we have inside. Right. They come out.
Yeah.
And for example, there's been a couple of friends that they are like, oh yeah, I want to do this. And it's like, well, just make sure that you are in the right place in the right frame of
people.
Mind.
Yeah.
Totally.
Don't do it with my old roommate.
Totally.
I'll tell you, he's the devil.
All of that is so important, but that is something that people don't really talk about it as much, They don't really know it. They haven't experienced it, but it's crucial.
Yeah.
It's the setting.
Yeah.
In every aspect. Feeling safe where you're at.
Right. Yeah.
The people that you're with. Somebody that is that is a good company.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that I just kind of like wanted to mention about the whole setting because you talked about it and how you felt like you were not in the right frame of mind.
If you look at every situation, I did it. I did mushrooms 3 times, I think. One with the crazy roommate who just took total advantage and thought it was funny. And
That's what I'm saying.
and I don't think he intended it. I don't think he knew what the impact it was having on me. Then I did it twice after that, and situations where I was desperately depressed because I was coming off of coke, and so not a good time to be doing it. And almost with deadly results. I mean, I'm just grateful that that it didn't happen that way. And yeah, I don't. I guess they do use it for some therapeutic things, and they say under the right settings, it can be helpful. Ketamine lifts depression, they say. I mean, for some people. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually finally, over all these years, in and back and forth and in and out of sobriety, and I'm also trying to mix this in with this sense of humor thing, which but what I did finally discover a few years back was having the chronic depression, like they talk about it. I guess, would you consider myself a comedian? I'm a man who uses humor to deal with things, to relieve stress, it makes me happy. When I'm at work and people are laughing, I feel good. And if I make people laugh, I feel there's something to, I don't know if it's not power, because I don't have trying to dominate anybody,
Right.
but I feel
You feel
it's my
empowered.
purpose,
You
right?
feel empowered by
and
it.
It's
Yeah.
my thing, and I'm doing what Ken's expected to do, and that's why if I'm ever down, people always say, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I'm like, "I just don't feel like being funny today." And it's I keep saying, "But Ken, that's your job. That's your job. You're supposed to be funny." These people, and there are times, and there are some people who I know well enough. I don't have to be entertained, but that's part of this weird gig, and trying to look at what it is that you're hiding behind it. And it's an unfolding process, but I discovered after years of being treated for depression, clinical depression, and people show up looking for help when they're depressed. And so what I discovered a few years back is I finally heard it, and a friend verified it, that friend that's in that recovery business, that I truly have a bipolar disorder issue. And I always thought everybody's bipolar. Oh, come on. Really? Really? Oh, another bipolar? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. But when I suddenly discovered I met all of the criteria for it, there's a bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, and I forget which one. One's more of a schizophrenia thing with hypomania or with mania, where they just kind of go off the deep end with can't sleep. And mine's the other thing. They have hypomania, where I will have with a predominantly depression, but occasional hypomania, they call it. And they'll go through periods where I'm up at 3 going to the gym because I'm feeling good, and then I'll crash back down. And so I finally got on a med. I went and paid a psychiatrist $500, to do it to go through the whole process. And Jeffrey's ex-wife helped me
Sarah?
walk through some of that. She had understood how some of that worked, and kind of gave me these milestones. I'm kind of like, if I feel like I'm getting a sign and she mentioned a medication that she had heard that was effective called Lamictal. And so when I went to this doctor, I went to him, I just said, how many more? Here's what happened. A few years back, I was reading an article, and I've tried depression meds on and off over the years. And they always leave me feeling weird with weird side effects. And I just I don't want to do it. And they're like, you have to stay on it 6 weeks and it'll get better. And I would do it. And it never seemed to change much, right? So I was reading an article maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, about a guy in his 40s. He said he's married with kids, has a wonderful wife and a wonderful life, but he has suffered profoundly with depression. And he had such a prejudice against medication, he wouldn't do it till finally one day he went in and said, I just can't deal with this. I'll try it. And he said, my life has been forever changed. He said, I wish I had done this 2 years ago. I've wasted so much of my life because I had a prejudice against medication. So I had a great primary care doctor. I'll go to for a physical every year. That's it. And he's a wonderful guy. And I told him about this article. I said, I've tried these things on and off over the years. And he goes, well, there's all kinds of new things out. If you ever want to try anything, call me. Well, I wait another couple of years go by. And I started seeing a therapist, and I told him, I said, I started seeing a therapist after that Michael Jackson. Remember the 2 guys that came out and did the big, popular documentary?
That was 2018.
That must have been, that probably was it. Whatever. Yeah, and these 2 guys that came out and really were trying to sue the estate and stuff. But one of the guys talked about at the end how therapy had helped him deal with something, and I just heard, and I've gone in and out of therapy, but I heard therapy and I thought, okay, maybe it's time to go back. And I went back to a therapist in 2018, I guess it was, that I'd seen back in the 90s. And he was still working. And I told him, I said, I'm here because I don't want to go on medication. I don't want to go on medication, but I'm getting the sense that that might be the only thing that helps. He goes, well, sometimes if you do therapy, it can rewire your mind, whatever. About 9 months into seeing him, he goes, have you ever thought about medication? And for some reason or another, I don't know. And I go, well, I mentioned that to you. I go, are you saying you think I should look into it? He goes, I think you should. It can't hurt. He goes, I have this guy, Dr. Keys, I recommend. He teaches at UCLA or all this stuff that he felt good about. And like all of them I've seen, it's $500. And that was depressing. So I'm like, okay, $500, whatever. And he did a thorough, and I went into it, started this way. Dr. Keys, I'm here for you to talk me out of meds. I don't want them. I'm not here seeking drugs. I don't want to take anything. I don't like it. But I've just tried everything, and here I am at my age, and I'm like this guy that I read about. Maybe have I wasted all this time? Anyway, he went through this thorough thing, and he said, I'm going to recommend a medic. You've fit all these parameters. You check all the boxes.
Criteria,
yeah. And he said, I'm going to recommend a medication for it. It's called Lamictal. Well, Sarah had said Lamictal, and that kind of felt like it was, okay, that's like, I don't know if God's saying, okay, check, I don't know, signs, whatever. All I know is I went on it, and it's changed my life.
Really?
And I've been on it since probably 2019, something like that. It has helped me. And a good friend of mine that knows me very well, who's known me for many years, I said, can you tell the difference? Because it's subtle. I'm not cracked out or anything. He goes, you're so much more stable, your moods. I just remember I would wake up in the morning and just go, oh my God. And people go, just get moving, get going, whatever. And I go, okay, here's what it's like. You have profound nausea every day of your life. Now just get your ass moving.
Really?
I'm like, and it's like, you'd have to what depression is, this darkness that's so like a shroud over you that it's hard to, when you have no hope, it's like, what the hell am I going to get moving for? I don't see any reason.
There's no incentive.
It's a horrible, horrible thing. And I always feel like I hear the voices, oh, what a bunch of bullshit. And then my Christian friends, you just got to pray. The medication's from the devil. And I said, well, apparently the devil's got a better idea because this seems to help. And I don't think I'm not altering what it actually is epilepsy medication. And it stops this, and people out there who know the accurate description, please don't condemn me if I'm saying it wrong, but it stops some weird misfiring or something, if I remember correctly. And I will say this, I haven't had an epilepsy attack since I've been on it. So it obviously worked for epilepsy, apparently. Which is not something to laugh about. I've known a couple people having it. It's a terrible thing.
Dude,
But I'm just so grateful. It has helped. It hasn't fixed all my problems. I'm still a flaky guy that starts things and never finishes them. I'm excited about doing this because what I want to do for a living is I like to talk. I'm comfortable in settings like this. I like to make people laugh. I just don't know. I did a stand-up thing a few years ago. I don't know if I think it was 2013 or 2014, at the Harp Inn. I found out they had an open mic night. So I went on a Tuesday night. I'm off on Tuesdays. Perfect. It's a sign, it's a Tuesday night. Because a lot of them are up in Brea on a Friday or Saturday. I have to take the night off. So I go to the Harp Inn and I watch, and they have a couple of headliners, really just a couple of local guys that think they're funny, do like 10 minutes each, and then you can sign up to do 5 minutes open mic. And it was just a handful of people. I don't know if you've seen the Harp Inn. It's over on 17th. It's a small place.
Yeah, it is a pretty small place.
Tuesday nights are obviously slow, so they do this thing. And they have a little stage. And so it was mainly a guy with his girlfriend, she would come with him, or a guy and his buddy, and there was hardly anybody there. And they would do their shtick. And I watched it, and I think I went maybe twice. And I go, okay. I talked to the guy that was running it, and he's a guy was associated with the Comedy Store. Interesting guy, really a neat guy. And I said, I'll sign up for next week. He said, all right. So I blasted at Fleming's, and I blasted at church, okay? So this little open mic night on Tuesdays, which maybe there's a total of 15 people there. I've got 35 people have come from my church and from Fleming, right? Two very different groups of people, right? And so consequently, they make me go last because I've got the crowd.
Right,
And so
right.
you got an audience, the biggest audience they ever had, he said. And so I've got my little ladies from church, God bless them, who came to support me, listening to dick jokes. And I mean, not even funny dick. These are bad dick jokes. And I'm looking over going, I'm so sorry. And she's like, that's okay. She goes, we know it's the Harpin. We do what, we can't expect it to be church, right? And they were nice enough to sit through this, and it was great. And it was the material I came up with. I'm really happy with it, and it was fun. And my friends from Fleming's were drunk, and my friends from church were kind
and sober.
And sober.
And sober.
But it's interesting. Almost every one of them, to a man. Forgive me for being so sexist, but that's what the saying is. To a man, ordered a drink, which I really appreciated. They out of respect for the bar, and I don't go to a church where you absolutely can't drink, but
Right.
it was interesting to get that experience, and people from Fleming's were so encouraging. It was really an interesting experience. But anyway, I did it twice, and then the guy that ran it said, "Hey," he was really encouraging, and he said, I think he goes, I've got a friend at the Comedy Store that books acts at the Comedy Store. I would like to refer you to her. And I hear that, and I look at someone like Isaac who's at work, who's been in it for a long time. I don't want to elevate myself to anything like that, but this guy was kind enough to make this suggestion. He goes, I can, and so it was one of those things when you give somebody the name, and they're like, oh God, okay, all right, yeah, have him call me.
Right.
And so I get in touch with this woman, and she's like, well, I mean, she goes, all I can really offer you is like, you live down in Orange County? I go, yeah. She goes, like, I'm in a last minute gig on Saturday nights if somebody doesn't show. And you'd have to be here like an hour notice. And I'm like, I work at Fleming's. That's how I make my money. And Russ Bendel wouldn't let me off on Saturday nights, at the last minute. And so that never happened. But anyway, so I just spend my time being silly at work and whatever.
So it seems that right around the time that you started taking this medicine for depression, seems that it was around the same time that you started your sobriety thing, right? You said about 10 years. So
my sobriety this year, January 1st, was January 1st, 2014. I had been in and out of sobriety, going to 12-step programs.
Okay, I'm sorry, really quick.
Yeah.
So what would trigger the flakiness with the sobriety? I mean,
Right.
why didn't you commit to it? Was it peer pressure? Was it just the need of having a drink?
A lot of it is there was a lot of behaviors that surrounded my using that if I dabbled too much in them, ancillary things that would bring me back into using, and that was a part of it. Part of it was I think when I went to Los Angeles, I decided in like 1995, you always want to be an actor. So, and I felt as if the Lord said, go be an actor. I'd had been involved in a little business. I got a cash, bought out, and I had a few $1,000. Not in my little world, it was a lot of money. And said, go give it a shot. Go get your headshots. And I actually put together a plan and went and got my headshots. and got things fell into place. I got this girl I knew from AA who had gotten involved with an organization. Back then they called them calling services. You're trying to get your SAG card, so you do extra work. And she had gotten in with this calling service, which was the top calling service in Los Angeles, 2-year waiting list to get in it, because they cast only like featured roles. And almost impossible to get in. Well, she put in a word for me, and they let me come up and talk to them, and they put me on their list. And I paid them $55 a month, and they kept me working. I mean, you may have seen some of the things I've been in, like there's an episode of Frasier where I am Daphne's best friend's fiance, Bob. I mean, actually, I'm not a face in the crowd. They gave me I don't know if you ever saw The Practice. You may not be old enough to remember the TV show The Practice about attorneys.
Probably.
They would be sitting with the three main characters here and me at a table in a courtroom. And I don't say anything, but I'm right there.
Right.
I'm not and so they got me this amazing work. And I actually did get a residual check from a Star Trek movie I was in 98 a couple weeks ago. It was $8.
Yeah.
So I'm not retired on my residuals. But when I went up there, that was hard when I went up there, was I got to face one of the things I struggle with is insecurity. I'm afraid of being criticized. I'm afraid I'm afraid if I can't do it perfectly, I don't want to do it. That's why I don't play the piano. My parents bought a piano and had me take. I didn't play it perfectly from that moment, so I was unwilling to do it.
Really?
So consequently, there's very few things that you do perfectly from the start. So I don't do much of anything, and I'm ashamed to say that, but it's a fact. So when I went to L.A., the extra stuff. Yeah, I got my Screen Actors Guild card, so I was basically a Screen Actors Guild extra. So you got paid better, and you got benefits, and I got some interesting roles that were, that I was seen, and but when it came time to become, if you want to really be an actor, you almost have to stop doing the extra work. Some directors hate extras, some directors respect it. A lot of actors have been extras, but they don't want to admit it. A lot of top stars I don't know, it's got something. Some people, some guys on the crew call it they're props who eat. So because they're always eating all the food at the craft service table or whatever. And but what you'd have to do is, get a job at a restaurant and get an agent and just go out on auditions. And that I was not willing to work that hard for. And B, I wasn't a good actor. I was a terrible actor. I was not. And mainly, I think that has to do with the fact that and I don't mean to try to get too psychological, but it's a fact. I didn't know myself.
Right.
I didn't know how to get in touch with feelings. You don't feel feelings when all you do is just try to make people laugh and keep people away. And so these acting classes were like therapy, and it flipped me out. And I wasn't good at it. So, I mean, I could be good at like being on Friends. Those guys were playing images of themselves.
Right.
I mean, and I'm nothing to denigrate them. They got paid very nicely to play themselves.
They did.
$20 million a year they're getting into residuals currently. Can you believe that?
$20 million.
They must have had they had a great contract. We're getting $1 million an episode when they finished.
Towards the end.
But most people's residuals, I don't think, run like that. It's amazing. $20 million a year. That's what they said. Matthew Perry, and I guess they're all getting the same thing. But just to sit at home isn't that amazing? I mean, I get $8 every 6 months from Star Trek, so I'm trying to make that work. But so yeah. Anyway, and I don't mean to make this a whining fest about myself. No, but at this late stage of my life, people like you are an encouragement because you're a doer, and obviously you're not a particularly addictive personality.
Yeah, I don't
because that's just not your nature, which is such a blessing. You're a hard worker. You're creative. You're willing to try different things, and it's an inspiration to me. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
And so I'm doing this writing thing. During the pandemic, I would take random photos. I'm fascinated by old pictures and stuff, and I would find an interesting picture. And during the pandemic, I would write a short story, fictional story based on that picture. And so I took one of them I wrote that I was really happy with and wrote it into a screenplay. And then I've written a second screenplay, and I'm currently in the middle of writing a multi-episode screenplay about a story I thought of years ago. And I'm on my 12th episode and kind of stalled out. And usually if you do a limited series episodic thing, Netflix wants 10 episodes.
Oh, really?
That's what they say. That's what I've read. So I did 10. Now I'm over 10. I'm on 12, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to wrangle this thing and stop it. But I am. The hard part too is how do you sell it? And the thing I had when I went to be an actor, I felt as a believer that God was saying, just step out, go get your headshots. But what about, don't just get your headshots, go get your headshots, and we'll worry about it later. And I think that it looks insurmountable, and anything that looks insurmountable, I'm not interested in getting involved in. And like selling your screenplays you read articles, it's next to impossible. It's incredibly hard to do. Without an agent, they won't read your stuff, and they won't take unsolicited material. And who maybe there's. But what I find is in my life, if there's something that I'm supposed to do, there's a way made for me, and I'm grateful for that in the past. And then what I find though is if I end up usually ruining it by going back to drinking and using. And that way shuts. Everyone goes, why don't you go back to that furniture business you had? Nope, the door's shut behind that. It's like there was a door, a time and a space open, and it has closed again. And well, maybe that's just me making up a story about it. But it was, I lost a lot during that. That was early 2000s. And So
wow.
So I'm
That's-
hoping with the screenplay thing, I'm hoping that talking to you is a step in toward a direction. This is the kind of thing like what you're doing, a podcast thing.
Yeah,
The
right.
problem is I don't shut up. You're a good listener, and I can practice being a good listener. But I love to talking. I wanted attention and get paid for it. That's what I said when I was in Hollywood, and those jobs are taken.
Gotcha.
Jimmy Fallon, he gets attention and gets paid for it, and he just has fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like it's a lot of work, I'm sure, but you know, so.
I hear
There
you,
we
man.
are
I
in
hear
a
you.
nutshell. Any questions I can answer for you? I think I've told you everything there is to tell. So.
There is something. I'm sure we'll go back to the sobriety and addiction stuff like that. But there is one story that you told me that it's. I don't know if you want to share that about the artist guy that you were helping out sell his paintings. Remember that
really?
old man?
I told you that story?
You
Yeah, yeah,
did, man. It
yeah.
was. I remember.
Yeah.
Up until today, it still stays in my head,
It's a
and that
great
was like
story.
what maybe we talked about it 4 years ago, maybe
Oh,
3-4 years
okay.
ago.
So we didn't talk about it at lunch because
No,
okay,
no, no.
I didn't remember talking about it at lunch.
Yeah,
Yes.
we talked about it. I mean,
Yeah.
one time when we were over at Jen's house, and you kind of like right
That
when I
makes
was
sense.
starting, when I was doing, was I starting with my art, or it was some time in between there, and you started telling me about this
great
older man.
story.
It's such a great story. If you wouldn't mind sharing
Oh
it,
no,
because
I'd be
it's such a
thrilled to
great
sell it.
story.
His name was Ed Turner. I had a little retail store that I sold furniture out of, and like I said, when I came home from LA as an actor, trying to be an actor, and I left because I gave up like always. And there's a whole crazy another story that related to lesbians and Vicodin. I mean, it's all a part of it. And yeah, this girl I knew that was offering me her friend was a casting director for some major TV shows at the time, and she got this girl offered her. This girl said, "I'll give you anything. I owe you for getting me Vicodin on a weekend because everybody was strung out on Vicodin at that time. Not me, but others. I had other problems, and so she said, "I'm going to make you the favor." And she said, "This girl's." I told her, "I want you to get her to get you a part in one of her shows, which would have been huge." Anyway, it all fell apart. I put all my eggs in the basket. So I came home. So I moved back in with this woman that was like an aunt to me. I rented a room from her, and she sold furniture. And she said, "Why don't you do this?" I had a friend of mine that had been laid off from work. He got a master's degree from Pepperdine. Had a brand new Dodge Ram truck. "Why don't you and that friend take this old furniture I have here that I'm not using to the swap meet?" So that's how I got into this weird furniture business. And fast forward a couple of years, I had a retail store, and this friend of mine, Scott, who I'm still friends with today, who hated it, didn't want to be doing this, but he couldn't find a job in his field. And he was in the mental health field. That's the one that's in the recovery company that I mentioned earlier.
Gotcha.
So he would stay there, and we had a warehouse, kind of a warehouse space across the parking lot. He would paint this cottage white furniture. It was so big in the early 2000s, that shabby chic stuff. And I would buy stuff at auctions and along with the painted furniture. Well, I said I was going to go drop some things off, and Scott went to man the store. I said, "Would you hang out here?" Because we had a retail space. I go to pull back into the parking lot, and there's this old yellow 70 Dodge Dart and stalled out in the driveway. And I'm like, I'm on Superior, which is like a freeway, and I can't get in. And finally, he fires it up, and it belches smoke, and he chugs off down the street. I go, Scott goes, "You missed the weirdest dude." I go, "Is the guy in that Dodge Dart?" He goes, "Oh my gosh." He goes, "He is a character." I go, "Really?" I go, "What's his deal?" He goes, "Well, he was here admiring the art we have, and we had the crappiest art. I mean, we were not about art, but we had some
Right.
things on the wall." I go, "Well, if he's admiring this, he doesn't have much taste." Well, he came back. He was just this odd character. He was 70 years old. He lived over the Bayside mobile home park down by the Back Bay. And he lived there with his common law wife. They'd been together since like 1970. And she was a cocktail waitress at the Bay Club. She was 80 years old, schlepping cocktails. He was like a kind of broken down drunk that had been an artist. I didn't realize till later how successful. And he was sitting at home buying crap on the internet, spending the money she was making, and they were living off Social Security. Well, she started getting dementia. And can you imagine a cocktail waitress with dementia? It's like, "Miss, where's my old fashioned?" And so she got fired from, at 80 years old.
Ouch.
And that was their main income. And they were paying $1,200 a month at that time in 2002, I think, for space rent. So they got evicted. And he had come by and seen me, and I'd liked him because I thought he was interesting guy. I like old people, and he was telling me these Kenny, all these stories, and he would pick up weird stuff in my warehouse. How much do you want for this? I go, I don't know, Ed. It's a piece of fabric. You could have it for 50 cents. And he would get this basket full of weird shit together, and I'd charge him $8, and he'd write me a check. Well, one day his check started bouncing. I don't know if I told you all this. And I banked at Union Bank with Business Bank, and he banked the same bank. And I went in. I said, can you do me a favor? I think it was a $50 check. Can you check? I don't want to put this through twice. Would this clear? And she goes, no. I'm like, oh, God. So that's when I found out they were evicted. They were living in that Dodge Dart.
Oh.
And so they ended up with pneumonia. And the social services took her from him because they found out that she was having some cognitive problems, and that they put him in like an alcohol rehab. And he's calling me, Kenny, I need you to come get me out. They've got, what's his wife's name? I don't remember her name. They've got Sue or whatever her name was. And so suddenly he gets entwined in my life. And he needs, I go to help him pick up his car. She's got her bra strung across the headrest because they were drying their clothes in the car. Yeah. There was open cans of food, and it was in the parking lot at Hoag Hospital, and when they'd been taken away. So anyway, he starts telling me about, I go, Ed, what are we going to do with you? Because we don't know where they're going to live. And I may have told you the story about they found a place, somebody rented them a room. And I said, let's celebrate. So there was a restaurant called Sopranos off of Newport Boulevard. I said, come down, I'll take you to Sopranos. And so I'm down there in the parking lot waiting for him. And here he comes in his Dodge Dart, and he's got a martini glass in his hand. and I'm going, Ed. And because he drives by the driveway. And he slams on the brakes, he puts it in reverse, and backs back up Newport Boulevard, which is one way. Anyway, a total character. Well, she slipped into one of her dementia things and started slipping off the bar stool because she was drinking, which she shouldn't have been. And he was yelling at her. And they showed up at their first night at this room they were renting, and they were so nuts, the guy said, you can't stay here. So they lost that, and I don't know where they went. I went to my church. That's right. They had a fund to help people who needed a place, and I said, I got a friend that needs a place, so they put him up. It was a Thursday, and he said, well, we don't have a lot of money in this benevolence fund, maybe for a day or two. And I thought, I know you're going to keep him through Sunday because you want him to come to church. So they kept him through in a motel till Sunday, which is great. And Ed comes to church, and he was his peculiar self at church. He's just lovable but crazy. So anyway, at one point, he says, Kenny, I've got some paintings. I used to be an artist. I go, yeah, I know. And I'm thinking, who knows what this will look like? Well, we went to the storage unit they had, which they could ill afford. And here were these amazing paintings. I'm like, oh my God, this is your stuff?
Wow.
He had been an artist with the Dalzell Hatfield Gallery. If you Google it, you'll see them. They were at the Ambassador Hotel from 1922 when they opened the hotel till, I don't know, maybe the 60s. Dalzell Hatfield was a famous, art gallery owner. I don't know if he was an artist. And Ed Turner was a young man who was alcoholic in the 50s and 60s in LA, but he painted beautiful portraits. And that's what he mainly painted were portraits of people. And the president of Warner Brothers' wife had a beautiful portrait of her. Had one of a famous jazz musician called Paul Horn, which if you Google him, you'll see famous guy. Went with the Beatles to see the Maharishi in 1968 or whatever. Interesting guy. And what reason he had them was like Paul Horn's album cover he painted in 58. He painted the album cover. Dot Records, who put out his record at the time, photographed it, and Ed got to keep the original.
No way.
So I had the original painting. It was just these paintings where I'm like, holy cow. Ed Turner he had two Purple Hearts from World War II. He had been in the 10th Mountain Army Division. It's like the Navy SEALs of the Army, I guess. They had parachuted in during World War II. They had parachuted in to the mountains of Italy and skied down. I said, Ed, I read stories in high school about you guys that skied down through the mountain. It was just, everything about it was fascinating. Two Purple Hearts, and here's this guy who got nowhere to live. So he tells me, I said, he wants me to help him sell his painting. So I contact the Register to write an article about him. It's a perfect human interest story. Two Purple Hearts, living in his car, lost everything, drunk, amazing artist in the past. So they were like the the Gulf War had started. That was right at the time when the whatever with Saddam Hussein and
Afghanistan.
she's like, you gotta. She goes, give me time. But we got so much going on with the war, and I'm like, I don't have time. We need to find a way to support these people, and I don't remember where they were staying at the time. But so I called the Daily Pilot. I said, you want to scoop the register? We'll be right there. They showed up that afternoon, took pictures of all the artwork, and the next day the lady from the register says, oh my God. She goes, don't call the LA Times. Wait. So I said, well, I don't have time to wait. And so they came and did it too. And I said, whatever date you're publishing this, if you put it out on Monday, the next following day at 7:00, we'll have a preview. I don't know, she couldn't tell me when we're putting it out. So I said, whatever day you put it out, the following day at 7, we'll have an open house. So it came out on a Monday, and they said 7:00 Tuesday. And we had people coming from all over Southern California because of the story, because his art was beautiful. I mean, it was really good stuff. He had this huge composite mural that he had painted of Italy, based on his memories when he was there during World War II. And it was 10 by 7, but it was actual separate paintings that you could take off a grid that he had. It was fascinating.
Wow,
and
that's
so,
incredible.
But I put him up in a motel, not a fancy, with the Costa Mesa Inn or whatever across the harbor. He was him and crack dealers. But it was affordable. It had a kitchenette, and to him it was a palace, And so he was just, Kenny, oh my God, Kenny, this is wonderful, thank you. And his poor wife was laying on the bed. I came out, she was in her bra and her shorts, and because she was slipping into dementia, and obviously did not remember to put her shirt on. Right. So Ed's there, and he had this amazing painting that he had painted like in '55. It looked like James Dean. And I go, what are you doing there, Ed? He goes, I'm just touching this up. He'd taken and painted over that awesome 1955 painting with like contemporary paint. And I'm like, Ed. I said, let me take the paintings, and because he was going to ruin them. Now 50 years later, he's going to fix them. I got a call from the hotel one time. He fell asleep with a cigar and lit his pillow on fire. And so he threw it out the window, and it lit the grass on fire. He threw it out the window and went to bed, right back to bed. He touched up another one of his paintings and set it outside the door to dry. Somebody stole it, and that was a magazine cover. It would have been such a good one to sell. And and the motel, because they had read about it in the paper, they called me. I was the guy. I was the go-to guy. And anyway, God bless him. It was... the story goes on and on and on, but eventually I had 2 sales. The first painting we sold was to Beverly Ray, the owner of the Bay Club, who was a customer of mine, and her best friend was there, whose husband was Marilyn Wooten was her name. Her husband was the president of the Bay Club, and her and Beverly were best friends. And I told Marilyn, I go, do I dare tell Beverly that the reason we're having this sale is because she fired the cocktail waitress wife? And she goes, no, don't tell her that. And that painting hangs somewhere in the Bay Club to this day. But it was, anyway. And so Ed Turner was an amazing guy. But it got weirder. Social services came and stole her away from him because they were concerned of her welfare because he couldn't care for her. And that was a big deal. He ended up, after he went through all his money during the summer of 2003, he ended up living in the car again, and he was parking over by the Denny's, which that used to be at 17th and Newport Boulevard.
17th and Newport, yeah.
He would park. He'd go have coffee and then hang and sleep there. Well, cops showed up one night, ran him out, towed his car away, gave him 5 minutes to get all of his shit out of the car, which he did. My shop was just down the street, and I was living in my store. I'd made a little apartment, so I was probably not much better than Ed legally. And he knew it. And I thought, you cannot stay with me, Ed. You cannot stay with me. And now they've taken his car. I'm like, what am I going to do with Ed Turner? Now he's got nowhere to live. You cannot live in here with me. And he was banging on the door, Kenny. And so across the parking lot, I had this Quonset hut that was like a warehouse, and it was packed full of stuff. And I said, Ed, well, what I was doing before his car got towed, I would let him come over every morning and go, and there was a bathroom in there, and he would shave and wash up there, do his ablutions, he called it, which is actually a word for morning ritual, I guess. And so now Ed's got nowhere to live. So I've got Ed, you can live in the Quonset hut, but you cannot smoke, Ed. You cannot smoke in there. If you will die in there. It's because it's a total fire hazard with all that crap in there. And he had already fallen asleep at the motel and lit his pillow on fire. So
Yeah.
And so I had bought a bunch of stuff at an auction, a big cart full of clothes, random clothes. And I don't know, I was going to sell them on eBay. And nice stuff, Falconer or whatever stuff that you got at Macy's, nice sweaters and stuff. And every morning, Ed would come waltzing out with one of these sweaters on. And I'd go, hey, Ed, where did you get that sweater? Oh, I've had this forever. I go, no, you haven't. You're stealing my damn clothes. And don't smoke in there. This was the Ed Turner stuff that I had to deal with. And anyway, in the end, we had a second sale, and I sold that painting of Paul Horn for $8,500. I got great money for the stuff. One of the biggest buyers was the widow of the former CEO of Southland Corporation that owned 7-Eleven. She was a big art collector. She bought a lot of stuff, and in the end, Ed Turner ended up in a recovery home, and I kind of lost touch with him for a while. But one day I was riding on the boardwalk, and there he was. I'd just been thinking about him, and he was there with a caretaker. And I guess he was slipping a little mentally, as if he wasn't already, but worse than he was. And I found out he was living in a little a retirement home on Fairview. And I went to visit him once, and he was gone.
Really?
I like, Ed, what are you doing? He goes, I'm writing. He would take his old checkbook from Union Bank and write checks $1 million. He goes, I'm writing checks to pay my bills. It was kind of weird, he had kind of crossed over to. Anyway, that's the Ed Turner story.
I don't remember. You told me the end of end of the story.
He was. I went looking for him again a year or so later, and they said he had died. So I don't know. I was just, but he was and there's so many crazy stories about him. Once we had that second sale, I took his money and I would give him $200 a day. I go, Edward, listen, I have an accounting for all of your money. And he go, and if anytime you want it, you just let me know. I'll give it to you. He goes, I know what you're doing. And in fact, the first time we had the showing after the Register article, he was over at his motel room, and I went over to visit him at noon, and he was, are you going to get ready? You're ready? And he goes, yeah. And I called him later that afternoon, and he was drunk. And I said, Ed Turner? I said, you are going to ruin this. I have gone to all this trouble, and you're drunk. And I go, Ed, you need to stop drinking right now. And he goes, I hear what you're saying. He said it was just a character. And so my friend Scott, I said, would you please go pick him up? And I remember we were waiting. He was late, and all these people are waiting to meet him. And Scott roars in across the parking lot, and here he comes with his tweed jacket with moth holes and smoking a cigar and a little ascot. I mean, the perfect part of the eccentric artist. And I've got someday I'll bring you the newspaper articles with the photographs of him.
Okay, that'd be great.
It was such a fascinating man, and I'm but a tortured artist. His father wanted him to go to school into business, and he had letters he wrote home to his mom from when he was over in Europe during World War II of how he wanted to be an artist, and she sympathized with him, but the dad hated it, and he was tormented because his mom died and was left with the dad, of course. One of the other things they say about comedians, often they have, I think I told you, have somewhat a distant relationship with their father, and he's creative type, and that was his thing too. But anyway, I don't know if you want to hear more about Ed Turner, but he was a fascinating, frustrating guy. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what a story. Like I say, I remember you mentioning most of what you share with us, and you just stick in my head, You just stick in my head.
Well, being an
because it seemed
artist
like
yourself, see, that's what you have to look forward to lose your marbles and go crazy, and I'll sell your art out of a storage unit. I'll make sure you're never on the street. You're living in your Jeep Cherokee somewhere behind the Denny's.
And it's one of those things, like you hear a lot. You hear a lot about the lives and the struggles of all these artists, right? Many of them have had a lot of mental issues,
Right, tormented. Yeah,
right? And then it's like, at least in my case with my art, and I don't know if I share with you with this, but it's not something that obviously it's my passion. I love doing it,
right,
but I don't ever want to burn myself out with it,
right.
right?
Yeah. I think that's and the thing about you, see, the reason I don't think you're going to make it as an artist, you don't have an addiction, you don't seem to be depressed, you haven't attempted suicide at least once, you haven't been to rehab.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's much hope.
Not looking
Don't
good.
quit the bartending.
Damn it. Well, at least I have the podcast going on. See what happens with this, right?
Just in case. Exactly.
But it is something that's like I see it, I have read about it, and it's just like it's really sad, right? Like how this creative side of people comes out, and when they're like really, really mental struggles.
Well, you know who I really think about is like Amy Winehouse.
Wow.
When she died of an overdose, right? And they have videos of her. I'm sure they're still on YouTube. Of her stumbling drunk on stage. And I remember I wrote in a comment. I said we all stood by and watched her kill herself, demanding that she entertain us.
Yeah.
I thought, how about people go? No, I'm sorry. No, you go get help. I will not buy another one of your records until you go get help. Yeah. You're dying here. Yeah. But a gifted artist, and it's just tragic. I mean,
but I mean, I feel that with her, it had to do with a boyfriend, right? I think the boyfriend.
I think there was some relationship issue that was a problem.
He was the one who was manipulative.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why she struggled a lot with that. But yeah, a lot of really creative minds have a lot of struggles in their lives, and I mean, like I say, so far, I'm
yeah,
good,
and it's proof that it's not essential, which is good.
Right,
it's not essential. And look at someone like, Jay Leno. I mean, Jay Leno's a funny guy. Was on, the host of. He doesn't seem to have problems, and he was a funny guy, successful comedian. I mean, it's not that it can't be done. It just seems to be sometimes it's a part of the deal, for whatever reason. But so, I mean, you're a good example where the ones that end up killing themselves or drinking themselves to death, you can always say, yeah, but what about Leo Cruz, man? He's an artist. He's successful. He's good, and he's not doing crack behind a dumpster somewhere.
Right, exactly, right.
As far as I know.
We'll talk about it. Right? We'll talk about it after this podcast.
All right.
So after 10 years of sobriety, Ken, how do you feel about it? How do you miss it? Do you crave it? How do you feel? What are you feeling?
I got sober through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, there's a big controversy about whether you're supposed to say that out loud. And it's because maintaining anonymity there are people that would have a fit that I said that. And I went through all 12 steps, and it changed my life. It helped me grow up. I was so immature. And my mom said to me once, she goes, if I could have institutionalized you against your will, I would have.
Really?
Apparently, I mean, I guess I was crazier than I thought. I was just always drunk, always never achieving anything. But I would always have jobs that I could get by with it. During the 80s, I drove limousines for the Ritz-Carlton, a company that had the Ritz-Carlton contract. So always busy doing that, driving drunk, having been up all night on coke. I mean, people had no idea. Thankfully, nothing ever happened, but it was not good. And so that I kind of always went back and forth back into the program, and the program never failed me. I just did not choose to continue working the program. So I can't say anything but good things about the 12-step program. But on January 1st of 2014, I don't know what happened, but I think it was a miraculous lifting where the Lord said, apparently, I don't go to meetings or do all that. It's like I'm not, I could go out tonight, and the way it works with addiction is, if that craving hits you hard enough, it can. And I think what happens especially in a program similar to 12 Steps, you work through the issues in clean house, and then you create a hedge you have to jump over several hedges to go back to using again. Are you calling your sponsor every day? Are you working with other alcoholics? Are you doing these things that help keep you in a spiritual state of sobriety? I don't do any of those things right now, and I've been as if I've been struck sober. I don't know, and I'm grateful for that. And it happens to some people, and I always wanted it to happen to me. And I guess because I don't know why, because I enjoyed the fellowship of the meetings. I really did. But anyway, so now how do I feel? I don't crave it. I don't think. I'm just so grateful. I just spent some time working with a friend of mine. I had mentioned a friend had relapsed after being sober being sober several years, and had an opportunity to go and to get him out of a hotel room in Las Vegas. Spent the night there with probably the most drugs I would have had, more drugs than I've ever probably done in my life in the room. And had I had a sponsor or been going, they would have said absolutely not go.
Yeah.
But I felt for this dear friend of mine who was calling saying, I feel like I'm about to die, and had driven to Vegas, and so he had help arranging for a detox for him, but his car's out there. I said, listen, I will fly out, and I will drive you to this detox, and I did that, and I had no urge to, thankfully, to do the drugs, but it doesn't mean it can't come back, and I mean, it would be, and to put myself in that kind of situation probably isn't wise, but I'm grateful to say I didn't, but I don't know. It's just not something I would kind of imagine seeing myself do again. But like I said, I don't want to be presumptuous or
But
whatever.
at the same time, I think that you're in a completely different stage of your life. Like you mentioned earlier, you were an immature person, right?
Yeah.
So I think that I feel like there has been a lot of changes, and you have had a chance to work on yourself,
Yeah.
and understand that you are a happier person. You're a better version of yourself now.
Right.
And that person that I've known, for all this time that you've been working with us, it's very pleasant to have you around.
Well,
I'm
thank
just,
you. I appreciate
you're very, very, and that's why, when I wanted to do the podcast, you were one of the person that I was like, it would be super fun to have you here.
Well, I appreciate it.
And I'm glad that we made it happen.
Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity to do
Absolutely,
it.
my friend. Absolutely. It's like, once again, it's a pleasure to have you, unless it's a fucking Sunday.
Yeah.
With that prime rib
Prime
special,
rib Sunday,
and
yeah.
you're running around like
Lord.
fucking
I
crazy.
seem to my sobriety lined up with that ending. I think that had something to do with it.
Bro,
It
I
was.
mean, like I said, you can be so amazingly composed
no.
and so, well put, but when you lose it, I think we all do, right?
Now, maybe not like I did. The dishwashers, one time, their eyes, because they'd never seen me beat anything around. Thank you, guys. Yeah. And Jordan used to call me Ken F. Words instead of Edwards because I always said I'd go to church in the morning and I would lose my salvation by the end of the night because that prime rib Sunday was insane. It was just horrible.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It was terrible.
Absolutely
so
ridiculous.
Grateful.
That
for
it's over. Yeah.
I'm grateful.
But Edwards, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I
appreciate your time.
appreciate it. My pleasure.
And we'll be doing this again. If you want to come over and share it, because I know you have plenty of stories.
Well,
we just have to go and see if they are
fit for or safe for work
safe,
or NSFW
safe for,
or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah, right. Maybe I'll bring pictures. Yeah, no, but I appreciate it. And if I don't come up with new stories, I'll make some up for you.
No,
so,
for sure.
Right?
I'm sure you'll make it happen too.
Well, thank you.
Thank you,
I
Ken.
appreciate it.
We'll
It's
talk
a
soon,
pleasure.
brother.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.